Chapter 10, After Celta, From Tragic Loss to Hope and Escape. In the last chapter, I told you about the joy I found in finding someone to love and someone who loved me. I told you about the experiences I had, and I hope it was clear just how meaningful this was in my life's trajectory. It was so important to present the profound and positive impact this had on my life. This was life-altering. The experiences I had growing up in my home environment were toxic to the development of the kind of self-confidence and self-worth that I would need to achieve my career goals. Something had been missing despite all the improvements I had made in my sense of worth. It's hard to know what you need to overcome a problem that has existed throughout your life. My therapist or counselor in college was very talented, competent, and profoundly helpful. However, we failed to fully appreciate all the negative impacts of abuse and devaluation that I had experienced in my home life from my parents. Then I met Celta, and something happened. She seemed to delight in me. She was so interested in my experiences. She also was concerned about my well-being and happiness. I knew she was thinking about me for most of the day, each and every day. Her diary-style stream of consciousness letters told me this. I knew she was thinking about me for so much of her day, each and every day, because of the letters she wrote to me. Her diary of sorts, composed with me in mind as someone she wanted to share her life with. I realized that I previously thought that I was not that important to anyone. This is what I meant by seeking a relationship with some aspect of exclusivity, or the idea that I could be the most important person to someone. I knew that I was the only one that Celta loved the way she loved me. Previously I had friends, but they all had a boyfriend, girlfriend, or spouse, or the relationship wasn't as close. After I was with Celta, I felt like I was 10 feet tall, confident, worthwhile, and deserving. My self-esteem was higher than it had ever been in my life. I also felt safe trying new things. This idea might seem unexpected. She was just a small girl, woman. I sensed that she deeply cared about me and thought about me, and that was transformative. It's important to underscore these important points before I move on with this story. When I say that our relationship was platonic, I mean that we were not boyfriend and girlfriend. We didn't have a physical relationship. That being said, we did exchange "I love you" on a daily basis, or whenever we talked on the phone or saw each other. We were close and perhaps somewhat intimate and physical, but not in a sexual way. Then later, there was the fact that she said in September that she loved me, but wasn't in love with me. What did that mean? What made it so complicated was the fact that Celta knew exactly what I was feeling and experiencing. It bordered on two people being psychic and connected to one another. I didn't have to tell her much about the abusive and toxic experiences with my parents when I came to see her. She knew. She comforted me. In her presence, I experienced something no medication ever offered: total and complete serenity. As time passed after she said she was not in love with me back in September, I was afraid to ask if that had changed. But as the weeks went by, something felt different between us. The way she looked at me, the way she touched me, the way we held each other, it all seemed to contradict her September words. I began to suspect that what she had said then might no longer be true, or perhaps had never been entirely true. Her eyes and our time together suggested something deeper than what she had been willing to name. Looking back now, decades later, I can see what I couldn't fully understand then. We were both in love. Whatever she had meant in September, by late December, our connection had evolved into something unmistakably romantic, even if we never found the words to discuss it. Late in December, something happened that confirmed this. I had moved to kiss her as we spent so many countless moments of perfect serenity together, holding each other, arms wrapped around each other. It was impulsive, but it felt inevitable. This was my first kiss, lips meeting lips with someone I loved. But her lips were so thin from her anorexia that the physical sensation wasn't what I had imagined. I felt confused, not because the moment was wrong, but because the physical experience was so different from what I had expected. She didn't turn away or suggest that this should not happen. It just happened. It was what we did that day. If either one of us had not wanted it, it would not have happened. I discovered for the first time that some expressions of love are outside our control. This is relevant when one thinks about the religious brainwashing to which I was exposed. On the drive back from that visit, I found myself replaying the moment, trying to understand it. It wasn't disappointment I felt. It was more like surprise at how different the physical sensation had been from my expectations. But the emotional significance was profound. We had crossed a line, acknowledged something that had been building between us for months. I began to imagine what our next kiss might be like. I pictured my face turning to the right and moving closer to her as she moved toward me. I had been so in sync with her and felt so comfortable. When we were together, there were so many times when she had that look of someone who was happy, comfortable, and unmistakably in love. She definitely had romantic feelings, regardless of what she had said back in September. When I was with her, I could read myself and my feelings reflected in her responses. You just know these things. There were so many subtle behavioral cues that told me what she was feeling and how she was responding to my presence. Everything had been welcome between us. But what was most profound wasn't the way I touched her. By focusing on that, I would be missing the deeper truth. What moved me most was the way she touched me. She was never an object to be approached and desired. I was comfortable enough to be close to her all the time, and in those moments she was reaching for me too. It was so natural and right. Those dreamy moments when we looked at each other, my leg on the side of her bed and her leg moving over to rest on mine. Those moments after my arrival when we faced each other in the fetal position, staring into each other's eyes. Those were the moments when I was usually the first to say, "I love you," with her immediate response, "I love you too." Looking back, I realize I did always say it first, as if I couldn't contain what I was feeling. As I replayed that imagined next kiss in my mind, I would tilt my head to the right, bend down, and she would move to meet me, acting on instinct without overthinking it. She was my mirror in so many ways. Sometimes we do things as if the moment makes them inevitable. She would be transfixed on my eyes, and I on hers. I felt excited as I replayed this future moment in my mind. It was as if it had already happened. It would never happen. The worst news I ever heard in my life. On New Year's Day of 1991, I received the most devastating news of my life. A phone call shattered my world. I was in my room on the second floor of my parents' house when I picked up the phone and heard the words, "Celta died last night." How? I demanded, unable to grasp or accept the harsh reality. I was paralyzed by shock, desperately willing it all to be untrue. The question of how seemed like every part of me was challenging the mere possibility that this news could be true. The person I told every single day that I loved her was gone. No, that couldn't be true. There was a fire. She died from smoke inhalation. The fire had ignited from an exposed electrical cord on a TV. As details of the funeral, its location, and time filtered through my numb mind, I struggled to articulate the turmoil within me. I had spoken with the caller a few times before, a family friend, but now tears blurred my vision. Okay, I'll be there, but I can't talk. I choked out, my voice breaking. They needed to know I would be there. I let the phone slip from my hand and erupted into a storm of anguished tears. The pain was unbearable. The tears were unstoppable. Tears streamed down my face as I drove to the funeral, my heart heavy with sorrow. Standing before the closed casket, a tidal wave of emotion consumed me, a fleeting, irrational urge to open it and confirm that it wasn't Celta inside gripped me. At the funeral, my grief overflowed with tears flowing, and when I looked around, it seemed that I was crying more profoundly than everyone else combined. I was beyond caring about appearances or being able to control myself. It was at the Episcopalian church, the place Celta and I had attended together, where I would sit beside her mother as I had sat beside Celta herself. I was still a practicing Christian attending church regularly, but now everything felt unbearably different. After the funeral, standing outside, I was caught between murmurs of consolation and the overwhelming sight of the closed casket. A painful, unyielding reminder that this was real. My tears streamed unabated as I grappled with raw grief. And all the while, Celta's mother, with a mix of stern protectiveness and unspoken pity, forbade me from witnessing the burial. She believed, as did I deep down, that I was too fragile, that I wouldn't survive the storm of that final goodbye. Torn between obeying her and my own desperate need to honor Celta, I felt pulled apart. At the burial, it was as if the universe had decided that the one heart that loved Celta most, the one whose grief cut deeper than anyone else's, would be absent from that final tribute. I wasn't there, having followed Celta's mother's command by fleeing Athens, Georgia. In that absence, I was consumed by a bitter sense of betrayal, not just by fate, but by God himself. I questioned why the one force that should have sheltered me had left me to drown in my sorrow. Why was I shown something so beautiful as love, only to have it suddenly taken away? Despite this inner tumult, I sought help at a grief counseling group led by a nun at the Catholic hospital in Augusta, Georgia. A desperate attempt to make sense of it all. The sessions, revolving around guided imagery, relaxation, prayer, and scriptures, felt at once both comforting and painfully clinical. I met with her a few times and even asked for tape recordings, as if locking away her words might somehow patch the gaping wound inside me. In those group sessions where the stages of grief were laid out like a cold road map, the members shared mementos and memories of their lost loved ones. I listened intently, a wide-eyed outlier among older, seemingly more stoic souls. Yet I felt like I fit in and belonged. The cold reality of death screamed and cried out that I was meant to be here. I had been in love, and she was gone. That was true. And then there was my family, the constant yet strangely absent presence. My parents, with their indifferent instructions and vague expectations, never quite understood my inner chaos. There was a persistent stinging desire within me to share with them the overwhelming experience of having been loved so wholly by Celta. But instead, I was unable to share my story with them because I never did share things with my family. It would never occur to me that they would know how to comfort me. This silence about something so profound was a reminder of the callous indifference of my parents. They had never shown me compassion, empathy, kindness, or comfort, having never had real nurturing parents, not ever. I couldn't even imagine what I would want from them. As I recount this, it's painfully clear that it was the first time I had ever truly been loved, and that love both illuminated and cursed me. Could it be that my parents sensed I had never truly loved them in return? Anyone who saw me regularly would have noticed that something was terribly off, that I carried a secret sorrow beneath my composed exterior. Yet it was as if my parents and even my brother were haunted by their own denial, unwilling or unable to confront my transformation. Despite the emotional chasm that separated us, all I wanted was to celebrate the unique, transformative relationship I had with Celta. But how does one begin to articulate such complexity? That year with Celta, brimming with vibrant meaning and fleeting joy, now felt tainted by loss. The experience of being loved and loving in return can never be fully grasped until it is lived, and in its absence I was left wrestling with both euphoric memories and unbearable pain. In the midst of all this conflict, I found myself turning to alcohol, a desperate, self-destructive attempt to drown the duality of love and grief, to escape from the inescapable truth of my shattered heart. I was put on a tricyclic antidepressant by a psychiatrist. I had developed panic attacks as well. The antidepressant had the effect of creating a sense of positive feelings, even with my mother standing there one morning ironing something for work, with my father getting ready too. Those fake feelings were only transitory. It is reminiscent of the song by R.E.M. titled, "It's the End of the World as We Know It." And I feel fine. I guess I felt high. The days flowed around me like a mystical experience in which I flowed in and out of my body. I wasn't fully alive, or so it seemed, betrayed even by God. It was all a blur, my entire existence.